Good morning, everyone. I'm tansi.berrie, and judging by my appearance, I'm sure you could guess, but I was an art kid in high school. Starting from freshman year, I was the teacher's pet. Love you, Miss Ketcherson. Mwah. And I was an officer for the Art Honor Society all 3 years I was in it. In my senior year, I had the option to take art as an AP class. For those not in America, AP stands for Advanced Placement, which gives you college credits if you pass an exam at the end of the school year. This specific course was less traditional than the others because we had to develop a portfolio revolving around a theme and submit that for grading at the end of the year. Obviously, I took the class. What do you take me for? Someone who has a life outside of school and work? I've had a couple of years to reflect on everything that happened and what I would do differently this time around. I figured I would share my experience with y'all and give you some tips and tricks for your own journey. Let's get into it. In this course, you as the artist has to have an inquiry which fuels your sustained investigation. This inquiry is phrased as a question, and the images you submit are the answers to that question. You also submit pieces as works, but they don't have to be related to your essay. These are just for showcasing technical skills. Think about your elements of art and your principles of design. Alongside these images and works, you'll have written evidence. These are short paragraphs that let you explain your inquiry and ideas. These are super limited because you want to let your art speak for itself. All of these are put together into one big document that gets sent off to the graders, and that's that. I still have mine saved from when I submitted my portfolio back in 2024, so I'll be basing this video off of that and the files that I still have in my Procreate. Of course, my video isn't going to cover everyone's experience with the AP process. I chose to do AP 2D art, which was more about graphic design and composition, but there's also the options of AP drawing and AP 3D art. AP drawing is more about mark making and traditional drawing techniques, so portraits and still lifes and realism. AP 3D art is more ceramics, sculpture, jewelry making, fashion design, bookmaking, interior design, literally anything that's not 2D. They're graded based on different criteria, but the ideation and submission processes are the same. In my class, at least, we had all 3 AP styles in one classroom, so I'm vaguely familiar with how my classmates worked, but don't let my video be the end-all be-all for how you should do things. Still, I hope this can help you out. Let's move on to the first step, shall we? Obviously, we have to start with the ideation process. You can't really make a 9-month project-based art portfolio without thinking about it at least a little. At first, I was trying to go for something more personal for my inquiry, dealing with my feelings and relationships and stuff. I didn't want to do that, but it kind of felt like the only option. I was worried I wouldn't be taken seriously for drawing what I liked, which was my OCs. I was thinking about stuff like mixed media, artworks about my relationship with myself and the people around me, etc. None of it was really sparking anything within me though, which takes us to tip number 1. Make sure that this is an inquiry that you'll want to see all the way through. For me, that meant making my sustained investigation about OCs, because that's what I'm passionate about. If you lose passion 3 months in, you might have to completely start from scratch, or worse, keep going with an idea that you don't like that much anymore. That was kind of the case for me. I was having fun with this for the first couple months, and then it just became a chore that I had to keep going with. Obviously, I can't tell you what idea you should have, but my best advice is to choose something that you're not going to want to keep going with after high school. I know, this sounds counterintuitive, but think about it this way. You should work on a passion project when you're feeling passionate about it. When you're being forced to meet various deadlines, it's definitely not as fun. Plus, with AP, you're having to submit your works in a really specific format that doesn't give you the space to explain further. By the time the school year ends, you're sick and tired of whatever you're working on, and that's going to give it a negative mental association in your mind. Then you're not going to want to keep on working on it, and it's not going to develop into the project you wanted it to be anytime soon. I digress, I'm getting off topic. We're on the ideation stage right now. In my class, we did 4 things before even starting on any art. We wrote down what we like to do, where we find inspiration, what we wanted to do during the course of the class, and a mind map drawing connections between the things that stood out to us on this list. I found this really helpful since it let me understand the connections between seemingly separate parts of my artistic self as a whole. You can see this document that a lot of my ideas center around characters, stories, and aesthetics, so I was keeping these in mind as I went. Some of my SI ideas were total misses, but eventually one of them stuck. How can I develop a world through works focusing on the characters, locations, and items in it? Alright, we have an idea. Now what? I'll tell you now what, we get to brainstorming. Because what the hell does this mean? Develop a world through pieces focusing on the characters? What are you talking about? Well, this is where we're gonna figure it out. I had a whole document about like 20 pages long, full of my ideas and lore that I would love to share with you all, but it unfortunately got lost to time once my school email got deactivated because I had forgotten to export it somewhere else. Oops. All of this is from what I remember and what I still had written down in my notes app. The main premise is that my characters live in a coastal city called Sonosil, where it's constantly raining. This means that they're carrying around umbrellas constantly, so they've become a significant part of culture in this area. The region itself was based on a combination of Thailand and Italy, since I wanted the weather and religious aspects of the former and the architectural cityscaping and design of the latter. It was a fantasy setting sometime around the 1900s, 1930s, and everyone had magic in the form of mana, but there were also gods that people could pray to and leave offerings for in order to get magical gains in turn. My project focused on the two characters that I made, who were named Tamari Rose and Lucian Shrisuan. Tamari Rose was a human who worked at the Sonosil Athenaeum, which is just a fancy word for a big library. She was studious and liked to keep to herself, and spent her time outside of work at home studying non-archetypal magic. This was magic that's outside of your typical evocation, divination, abjuration types of magic. For example, she would be studying curses, transmutation, conjuring, stuff that's not considered socially acceptable, but not illegal to do, just harder to access. We also have Lucian Shrisuan, also known as Vedavathya. He was a dragon god who was magically cursed by the follower of a rival god. This caused them to fall into a coma for around 250 years and trapped them in their human form. By the time he woke up, he hadn't aged a day, but was mentally stuck in the past. So, we have a world, we have our characters, they have their backstories. Finally, we can start drawing pieces, right? Right? Well, technically, yes. Let's talk about that more in the next section. Unfortunately, I had run into the age-old issue, having ideas above your skill level. I'll admit it, I'll be honest, I'm not one for practicing anatomy, perspective, color theory, composition. Oh, who's you? Therefore, when I was having ideas for pieces that involved all of these things, it was not working out well for me, but we persevere. My first piece was of Tamari in her room, looking at herself in the mirror. I worked in my inquiry by including things about the premise of the world where I could. She's holding an umbrella open indoors, which shows you that there's no superstition or stigmatization around it. She has a tapestry in the top right corner with a water droplet splashing out into the shape of a book, which was meant to be a symbol of Vedavathya since he holds domain over rain and knowledge. She also has a family picture on her side table, which I thought was cute to add. However, I think we can all see the glaring issue here. This looks like Az! Her body proportions look crazy, the perspective is awful, there's no line weight in sight, the colors are just okay, and that's not even taking into account the composition or the effectiveness of telling the story that I wanted to. I'll give myself grace. I think I was on the right path with the concept. Showing my main character starting her day would have been a great way to introduce lots of aspects into the world. I just didn't have the skills to convey it properly, and that's okay. Tip number 2, the point of AP is to show your growth across the course of the year. So, having bad pieces is a good thing. It gives us all room to work upwards. For my next piece, I wanted to have Tamari and Lucian interacting. This was going to be in the Athenaeum where Tamari works, so I could showcase another location. This one had a lot more planning put into it than the first one. I drew out a quick blueprint sort of type thing for the Athenaeum since it was meant to be a large round building, almost Library of Alexandria-ish, so I wanted to make sure I got the details down before I started drawing. I'm also not that great at character interactions and side profiles, so I drew out a sketch for that too. In my first iteration, it was just the two of them standing against a single bookshelf, but that wasn't conveying the grandeur of the library as it was meant to be. I changed that so now in the background you can see the inner wall of the library. I warped the perspective so you can see a slight curve on the edges, which reinforces the illusion of perspective from where they're standing. The two of them are posed so that Tamari is leaning up into a space and Lucien is leaning back kind of a little, just kind of alarmed. I thought this was cute to add, but Tamari's hair highlights are in the shape of hearts since she's excited someone else is interested in what she likes to study, and Lucien's are in the shape of exclamation marks since they're surprised. I also like the lighting in the background since you can kind of see how on top of each bookshelf there's a little overhead light shining down, which I had a lot of fun with when I was polishing up the drawing. As for the cons, it's the same issues that I had with the first one. No line weight, stiff posing, really harsh foreground lighting, etc. I remember at this point I was scared of using line weight since it wouldn't be as consistent as I was used to with just like a static brush thickness. Luckily, I get better about it later, but alas, we're stuck with it like this for now. My next 3 piece ideas never came to fruition. I think all of them suffered from not having the skill level to back up my ideas, and also from my social anxiety in a sense. Let me explain. Sketching in front of other people is awful, it's horrible, I hate it. There's always this pressure to make things perfectly the first time around, especially in physical pieces, which I was trying to work my way into. And when you have a classroom full of people that could potentially be watching you struggle at drawing a silly anime girl while they're making beautiful watercolor mixed media pieces about how their father's death affected them forever, well, Catherine, I'm so sorry for breathing the same air as you. I'm sorry we never talked. You're really cool. Please don't hate me. Anyways, doing stuff is scary, and yet we persevere. Better something than nothing. My first idea for a piece was one where Tamari and Lucien are going shopping in a local market somewhere farther into their friendship. I had an idea for lots of little stalls on a little offshoot of a port into the sea with a big fountain in the center to show that it was a bit of a better off area. Unfortunately, I didn't get past the planning stage because perspective sucks, but the next piece was going to be one based off of the screen cap from Spirited Away, where Lucien has finally been able to shift into his dragon form, and it's this really heartfelt moment where they're hugging and it's wonderhoy and emotionally charged and all that. We didn't get past the planning stage because I don't know how to draw dragons. Oops. Last but not least, we have this perspective-based piece where they're in a big greenhouse that has lots of plants in it and they're sitting next to each other and being all cute. 3 guesses why I didn't make it past the planning stage. In between all of these, I was working on other stuff too. I was making studies for various parts of the world, both digitally and in my sketchbook. I was also working on a piece for VASE, which is an art contest for middle and high schoolers here in Texas. Think of it like UIL for art, which is also a Texas thing. I don't know. Plus, I was employed and in tech theater for our school musical. Anyways, all that to say, learning perspective wasn't really my main focus right now. No time for that. It's already nearing the submission period. We gotta select our works for the portfolio. Remember, your sustained investigation images and your selected works are different. Your sustained investigation has to revolve around your inquiry, but your selected works are just for showing your best art pieces, period. For my essay, I chose to have the images in chronological order of completion. This would show the graders my improvement and the changes that I made to my art over time, which is the goal that we're working towards here. I'll show them all in order here so you can see what I'm talking about. As you're looking at that, you can see that there's a section for processes on the right. This is for you to talk really briefly about the technical stuff you did, which I'll talk about more in a bit. For my selected works, I had my 2 finished pieces for my SI, and then the piece I did for VASE about my Baldur's Gate OC, as well as a reference for my other Baldur's Gate OC, and finally a piece of my Genshin OC from like 2022. Yeah. In my defense, I didn't really have any other like polished pieces to submit, plus they were all character related, which was technically something I was working towards for my essay. Yeah, I don't know. Choose pieces that show your skills off and make sure that they're polished so that the graders like it. Now, we also have to have written evidence for your sustained investigation, as well as those little processes and ideas paragraphs that you saw earlier. They're extremely character limited since you want your art to speak for itself in a sense. My best advice is to throw professional speak out the window. Fit in as much information as you can, however you can. I did this through having pluses instead of ands and using shorthand for as many words as possible. You'll also need to reference your other pieces in the paragraph sometime, so do that by referencing the image number instead of describing the piece itself. This lets the graders know that everything is intertwined and that you're constantly drawing back on your own work and improving upon it. Alright, that was a lot, but we're almost done! Let's go! Come on, come on! Finally, we're submitting it! I'll be honest, I can't speak on this part because I don't have access to that part of College Board anymore, so you're on your own. However, I can mentally hold your hand while you do it. Now we wait. And wait. And wait. Okay, yay! The scores are out! Let's go look! Okay, so life isn't all puppies and rainbows and whatnot, but that's okay. This bad boy gets me out of taking one single fundamentals course at UNT. Yes, God! And the thing that really matters is that I tried. I know I'm not the greatest at art. I may wear glasses, but I'm not that blind. But doing this course was good for me. It got me out of my comfort zone, and now I'm making slightly better art. I wanted to redraw Tamari and Lucian as kind of a treat to myself to show that, yes, actually, I have improved, thank you very much. So, here they are. They got a little bit of a redesign, but I'm really happy with them. Everyone down in the comments, tell me if you also did AP art. Did you hate it as much as I did? Are you planning on doing it next year? What are your ideas for your sustained investigation? Let me know. Alrighty guys, stay safe and I'll see you soon.